Welcome along. Podcast, The Commute. If you hear some background noise, there's some blokes over the back fence cutting down trees today, and this is the joy of not doing things properly in a studio. But that's life. We'll push on. You be right. Concentrate. Focused. Focused, I said. Welcome. It's lovely to have you listening and also watching for those of you that have realised it's also do you call it a vodcast? I don't know. Is it a vlog? It could well be a vlog. And I think you can get a link in the bio if you want to watch it as a vlog / vodcast. I'm not entirely sure. I'm pretty sure it's on YouTube, so you'll work it out. Maybe put into Google, and I do love telling people how to Google, I always have. Maybe put into Google Marty Sheargold podcast vision or video. Anyway, I'll leave that with you. Quote of the day today to start the pod comes from Robert Downey Jr. And Robert's quote is, "I don't think I'm in any position to give anybody advice about anything." And I think we could all agree that Robert Downey Jr. has had a couple of moments in the past that preclude him from offering advice in certain areas. If you wanted advice on how to bust into someone's house and sleep in their spare room, here's your guy. If you wanted advice on quality gear, I'm sure in the past he could have helped you out. Anyway, God, what a comeback. That bloke was gone, wasn't he? For all money, just written off. Some of the press around him was extraordinary, and then just bang, how's the comeback? Including, obviously, Iron Man, which has just been extraordinary for his career and for his bank balance, I would have thought. Well done, Robert Downey Jr. That's the sort of stuff I love. Just guy down and out, career over, and just says, you know what? These obstacles in the way, they're not obstacles at all. They're just a path pushing me in a different direction. Let's flip the obstacle, as the Stoics would say. Let's flip the obstacle and find a path to new meaning. I love it. Well done, Robert, if you're listening. If you are listening, mate, well done. And, your sobriety is extraordinary. Congratulations. Regrets from last week, which I've added as an ongoing segment. Of course, if you're part of the commercial world and want to attach your brand to regrets, we can do that. Simple. I'm happy to read a liner. Regrets. I've had a few. Williams the Shoeman. On behalf of Williams the Shoeman, let's go through some regrets. I've had a few. Then again, too few to mention. Well, it'd be remiss of me not to start with David Warner. Now, David Warner, as people will know, I'm not a massive fan of David. He was always known as an on-field bully within the Australian cricket team, hence the nickname The Bull. It certainly wasn't from his size. And, I don't love that in cricket. Cricket feels like a place where, the bat and the ball should do the talking. Yes, was I involved in some shenanigans in schoolboy cricket? Absolutely I was. Am I proud of it? Parts of it, yeah. Yeah, parts of it I am proud of. But there's a point where you've got to leave the bullying behind. You certainly can't carry on like the absolute goose that he was in South Africa when the crowd bullied him into an absolute meltdown. Anyway, that's secondary and taking me off the main point here. Well, before we get to the main point, let's just relive the sandpaper disaster where David Warner, I don't know, coaxed, initiated, encouraged then a Test cricketer to put sandpaper into his underpants and scuff the ball in the hope of getting that ball to swing a little earlier than it perhaps otherwise would have. Yeah. So I've never loved that. I never loved his response to all of that. I never loved the fact that he was ever allowed to be in any kind of leadership position again, and I'm not sure that he ever was. I reckon maybe in the one days he might have had a leadership, and by leadership I mean captaincy / vice captaincy role. I can't remember if he ever got back to that in the Test arena. Christ, I hope he didn't. I'm still disappointed Steve Smith's been able to manage his way back into a captaincy / vice captaincy role, given that he walked past David Warner during said sandpaper conversation with a Test cricketer and said, I don't want to know what you're doing. I'm paraphrasing, but it was along those lines. Now imagine, just put Steve Waugh into that position, put Mark Taylor into that position, put Alan Border into that position. Are we having a captain that walks past and says, I don't want to know what you're doing? I don't know what that's about. I don't want to know what that's about. No, I don't reckon we are. But that does give you an idea of the position that David Warner had in that team. And perhaps the difficulty he was to manage at times, that a then captain would walk past and not want to know what he was doing. Anyway, Warner's popped up in the news again. He's been convicted and fined for mid-range drink driving. He's had to pay a $1,500 fine and put an interlock device into his car for 12 months. He's 39 now. Not 39 inches tall. So he's in Maroubra. It's the Easter long weekend. He blows a secondary reading of 0.104. Now, I don't know how that manages to even sit within the mid-range. Mind you, I could have done some research and found out what the top of the mid-range is, but I would have thought that's edging well up to the top of mid-range drink driving. His barrister said he was impaired, impulsive, and it was frankly a foolish decision to make. He'll be publicly denounced, and he will be publicly denounced, as he should, because the police prosecutor said the conviction should be recorded because he was well into the mid-range. There you go. He was well into the mid-range. Now, here's the bit I don't like. I mean, everyone's sort of thought to themselves, am I rolling the dice here? How close am I going to go to blowing over? We've all had that internal conversation. If you haven't, good luck to you. Most of us have thought, Jesus, how close am I? 0.104, I reckon you know full well that you're over the limit. Warner's claiming that he had 3 glasses of wine at a function. Well, he must have gone back to back. It must have been a drinking competition and then straight into the car for 0.104. So he's had 3. I know alcohol affects everyone differently. Let's not go down the road of excuse making just yet. Let's hear the details. Here's the bit I don't like. He was driving his children home from the function. His record prior to this mid-range recording was 10 speeding offences. 10 speeding offences? And 3 instances of using his mobile phone. 10 speeding offences is a lot, isn't it? So he's driving his children home. He reckons he's had 3 glasses of wine at a function. I'm not disputing either of those facts. Here's the bit I don't like. Apart from having your kids in the back, which to me is just extraordinary, he stopped short of the test site and he was seen moving from the driver's seat to the passenger seat. So he's seen the booze bus, pulled over, and tried to swap, or did perhaps successfully swap, with whoever was in the passenger seat. Now, I don't know if that swap took place or whether he was just attempting to swap. From a distance, he's been spotted by the police. I don't know the ins and outs of it. I know it's just been described in the media as seen moving from the driver's seat to the passenger seat. Jesus Christ. So he was going to let somebody else take the rap for that, in much the same way that he was going to let an 8-test match cricketer take the rap for putting a piece of sandpaper down the front of his underpants to scuff the ball. Fair bit of form here for Warner. Fair bit of form. Geez, I don't know, mate. It's funny how we pick and choose the people that we'll just forgive and how they can just move on in life. I wonder if Foxtel will reprimand him, or whether he'll just turn back up to work as is. I don't know. Does he lose commercial sponsorships out of it? I really don't know. Just interesting. And certainly worth a mention, I would have thought, only because it's the Easter long weekend. You've blown mid-range, 0.104, which has been described at the high end of that. You've got your kids in the car and you tried to jump into the passenger seat with 10 speeding offences and 3 mobile phone offences in your history. Good on you, Dave. Well done, mate. Another story that was remiss of me not to cover off last week, and I do regret, and there is a sporting theme developing here, I can see that. Nick Kyrgios has been provisionally suspended after he submitted a sample in June in Mallorca. Spelt Mallorca, but it's pronounced Mallorca. Bit of fun. And it was a Class A drug that he tested positive to, and he's since admitted to taking cocaine. He's taken full responsibility, says it's deeply disappointed, and he's deeply disappointed in himself. He's regularly taken aim. This is the thing about old Nick. He's regularly taken aim in the past at drug use and drug abuse in the sport. He wouldn't play doubles with Sinner because of Sinner's track record. He had a real shot at Simona Halep, who tested positive and was banned for doping, which she claims was accidental. He said, I run on bananas and Coca-Cola in 5-set battles, and my record speaks for itself. Maybe players should just stop taking shady shit, look yourself in the mirror, and at the end of the day say, yep, I did it right. He's a bananas and Coca-Cola guy. To Halep's breach, he said, if I was taking similar things to be banned for 4 years, I'd have about 5 slams. Potato. Just straight out potatoed, which is old school. You don't hear enough people getting called a potato these days. It's a quality. It's a quality chip on someone, isn't it? You potato. It just suggests so much, from shape through to IQ. So he's called Halep a potato. Reckons he would have won about 5 slams if he'd been banned for what she's alleged to have taken. I don't think you would have won 5 slams, Nick, because I don't think it's a physical thing for you, and I think we all know as the Australian public, your greatest downfall has not been your skills, or at times it's been your ability to execute your skills, but what we really think, I think as a collective, is that mentally you're not strong enough, and I think that's been the assessment of you as a tennis player. Oh, well, let me change that. That's my assessment of you as a tennis player. Here's Halep's clap back. It's got a real Holla Girl feel to it. Halep has posted a photo of bananas and a Coke, which I love, on her Instagram. And it says, with the caption, never kick someone when they're down. Life has a strange way of changing position, and an even stranger way of revealing the difference between an accident and a choice. Strong stuff from Simona. Kyrgios goes on to write a long post about not making excuses, which he then immediately follows up by making excuses about why he found himself in a position to take cocaine, all the sort of wear and tear on his body, blah. Lots of bloke have got sore knees, mate, and they're not all racking up lines. I do love just the Instagram footage of the bottle of Coca-Cola and the bananas. Well done, Simona Halep. So there we go. Regrets from last week, David Warner, Nick Kyrgios. Let's get through some housekeeping. I'll need my phone for this because it's involving messages on the Instagram. You can always reach out to me on the Instagram. I love hearing from you. I'm looking at all of them. I don't reply to all of them. Some I do. I guess it depends what time of day you get me. And do me a favor, follow me on Instagram if you can. That would be very helpful as I continue to attempt to attract an audience to not only the Insta, but to the podcast. Let's start with Michael Andrews. Is it Michael or is it Mitchell? Well, I think it's Mitchell, actually. My apologies, Michael. Mitchell, rather. Mitchell says, fantastic to have you back on the microphone, Shigsy. Good on you, Mitchell. Perth was great, although it feels like a fairly long time ago. He's referring to my Perth show on the Red Card Tour, still travelling around the country. Do yourself a favour, buy a ticket in Bowral next weekend. Love to see the Bowral people there. He said, he's got an idea for me. He said, I feel a dead shit of the week segment would be fantastic. Certainly never a shortage of dead shifts to riff your way through. Well, we've just been through two absolute dead shits in David Warner and Nick Kyrgios. Only my opinion. Calm down, everyone. I'm allowed to have an opinion. Bet you're glad you didn't listen to your mum's advice and buy yourself a post office to give yourself a job, says Mitchell. Well, that's a reference to mum having no faith in my career whatsoever, and possibly rightfully so now that we're sitting here. And continually suggesting to me that I buy myself an income over the years. She never understood that I've been able to make a living out of this. It's astounding every time I see her. Why don't you buy a Subway? Put a manager into it if you don't want to manage it. Yeah, okay, Mum, because I'm not going to make footlongs for strangers. If I'm going to make a footlong for a stranger, it's going to be in a hotel room. Boom! So yeah, I replied to Mitchell. I said, dead shit of the week's fun, mate. Might tweak the title. Mitchell said, best part of being the man in charge. You take the idea, you make it better. Well done. Well done, Mitchell. All of that is true. I don't know if I'll tweak the title, mate, now that I think about it. Is dead shit that offensive? I've said a lot worse. Good on you, Mitchell. Stuart Jamison got in touch with me as well. And Stuart said, loved the podcast. Last week's, I'm assuming Stuart's referring to. It was great to hear from Scottish Graham. And Scottish Graham touched base with me last week. He's an old listener from the radio days. Lovely man. Then Stuart posed the question, is there an update from the gin dog? Listening to you again on my hour commute up to Puckapunyal. Mate, that's so funny you should say that, Stuart. Is there an update from the gin dog? Because you won't believe it, mate. There actually is. And the gin dog, much like Scottish Graham, was a long-time listener and contributor to the radio show, and always such a lovely man. Just living this extraordinary life, making botanical gin in the UK, of all places. Ex-Sydney guy from memory, possibly Bondi. Ended up in the UK making botanical gin with a couple of Labradors and a lady by his side. The gin dog has touch base. G'day, Martin, you old horse thief, you old muckety muck. How wonderful to have you back in our ears. You've been sorely missed. Disneyland just hasn't been the same without your dulcet tones in the background. Well, gin dog, it's so lovely to hear from you. Would you like a gin dog update? You know I would. We've decided to shake the snow globe vigorously. Bought a yacht, can you believe it? And we'll be sailing it across the Atlantic this November ahead of a year or so, bobbing around the Caribbean, soaking up rum like a sponge. Your other old mate, Jack from the Pretty Littles, Jack was a regular contributor as well, Jack from the Pretty Littles' wife might be tagging along as crew. Imagine that. Well, Jesus, it's a small world. I don't know how she fits into your world, Gin Dog. Any tips on how best to stay clear of the hooch, the old jazz cigarettes? That'd be greatly appreciated. It's safety first on a boat, as you well know. Follow along at Mockingbird Sailing, if you like. All the best, Gin Dog. Look, I wouldn't stay clear of the hooch in the Caribbean. I think if there's one place in the world where you're going to rip into the hooch, I would have thought sailing a yacht around the islands there. Given that safety is your priority, obviously, I would have thought you're just tonking on with moderation. I'm not encouraging the use of drugs. I want to be very clear on that. I just said I would have thought that bobbing around the islands in the Caribbean would have been a place where you could perhaps smoke hooch. You know? Maybe I'm wrong. I'm just going to have a sip of me Joe. Oh. Might have left that a bit long. A little cooler than I like. Dad used to make black coffee, straight black coffee, Nescafe, just straight out of the jar. And he'd put 3 saccharin in it, wait for it to get cold, and then he'd scull it like it was water. Strange. Who else have we got? Richard Gilligan. Gin Dog, lovely to hear from you, mate, as always. Please stay in touch. Now, Richard Gilligan and I have been backwards and forwardings about cricket and men with earrings and all sorts of stuff. And he's come up with a couple of ideas. He said, long form Marty is hook. Got a few Ask Martys for you. UFO footage being released, ? The Bobblers argue. I'm not exactly sure what that means. I should have looked up what that's about. Is your team rubbish? Richard says, I've been a fan of the Eels since I was 8. So have I, Richard. I'm now 62. I did have the 80s. Yep, we did have the 80s, which was just such a time. I first saw snorkel plays, referring to Peter Sterling there, on a Saturday morning, Commonwealth Bank Cup schoolboys. That was the schoolboys competition in the day. And there's a little bit there about some private stuff that I might just scoot over for Richard, not having his permission to discuss that. Then he says, anyway, once had a naked lady walk into my house and ask me for a slice of bread. See ya. Richard, a little more detail on that would be fun. Then he thought of another segment for me. Bullshit stories your family have told over Christmas dinner. My old man said he coached Wally Lewis at Nudgee College and made him a lock forward, and my grandfather scored 4 tries in the Brisbane Grand Final, of which I can find no evidence. All right, well done. Then he just finishes with, this is true. So this isn't a bullshit story. This is a true story. When I was 14 years old, I gave Stevie Nicks a hand-painted Japanese egg. All right. All right. There's a lot going on there, Richard, and I love all of it. Thank you, mate. He's also come up with the idea of when did everything go to shit, and suggested that the start when caramel became salted caramel was when everything started to go to shit. A couple of ideas in there from Richard. Bullshit stories across the dinner table. When did everything go to shit? And perhaps, stories, true stories. Leanne Matthews, as we continue through the old, what do we call this bit? Housekeeping. Where's Leanne? See, I used to really have a big crack at Will Ralston when he did this job on the radio show for never being prepared. Now I understand some of the problems that William had as he was scrolling through Instagram trying to find comments. Apologies, William, if you're listening. Leanne Matthews says, Hi, Marty. Just wanted to say I'm happy to have you back in my ears. I've missed you. The ray gun stuff made me laugh out loud like a crazy person. Keep up the hilarious work. I was so happy to hear the names Sausage Legs and Scottish Graham. Good on you, Leanne. Stacey Power has contributed with, Marty, please come to Tamworth. We're huge fans. But our friends are having a winter wedding on Saturday. In brackets, Stacey's written cheap friends. So I'm not sure if she wanted that mentioned. We would have driven 3.5 hours to see you in Warners Bay, where I was this weekend past. I did Avoca Beach and Warners Bay as part of the Red Card Tour. She would have driven to Warners Bay. She's asking me to go to Tamworth. Well, Stacey, I've done a bit of research about Tamworth and been reliably told it's actually quite a difficult market to sell tickets in. Over to you guys. Maybe get a petition together. Get 200 names on it, 300 names on it, and I'll come to Tamworth. Lovely to hear from you, Stacey. Jake Willis has got involved. Loving the new pod, mate. Have a listen to the Two Tins podcast, says Jake. It's me and a couple of mates talking shit and playing games radio style. I'd love for you to give it a listen and roast us on yours. Ha ha. Well, I haven't given it a listen, Jake, but I have mentioned yours. If I get around to it, I will, mate. Which is code for me saying I'll never have a listen, Jake, but good luck to you. Keep punching. Enjoy life. And finally, Jake. Jake said, loving the pod, listening to it while I was watching a wild baby wombat eat carrots my mother's cut for her. Not sure if I could send a pic of her. Insta isn't my thing. I'm more of a facts kind of guy, says Jake. I can't send a pic, so I'll describe it as best I can. Here goes. She's a small wild wombat eating carrots out of a chrome dog bowl while I sit here like a F-wit, watching her to make sure she doesn't get bullied by the other older wombats. This is not my idea of fun. My dad has been doing this for years, and he had a knee replacement last Tuesday, so I'm doing this every effing night for the next few months. Every effing night, says Jake. Keep punching, mate. You'll look back on these wombat days with fond memories as you age and think, Jesus, I was a good person when I was feeding wombats. Well, thank you, gang. That's the housekeeping component of the podcast covered off. Let's hit the vault. Here's a story from the vault. It's an old one, 2019. So, I've done older, and I'm not afraid to go older. Let me have a sip of me cup of joe. Under the headline, Hoax Pastor. Not pastor as in, buppa-da-boop, pastor as in man/woman of the cloth. Hoax pastor. A female pastor performs oral sex to remove demons is the headline. So naturally it gets my attention. I love a bit of a female pastor removing demons with only using her mouth. Turns out it was a hoax. So you can imagine how disappointed I was. And thank Christ I did a tiny bit of research before I just believed that there was a female pastor out there performing oral sex to help remove demons from some of the punters. However, it's actually based, that little Instagram faux story is actually based off a real story from 2019, hence why I've whacked it into the vault. Reverend Dr. William Weaver, Bill Weaver, he's 69, quite ironic. He was in New Jersey. He was a Presbyterian minister for 39 years, mind you. This is not a bloke on day 2 starting to make some stuff up. This is a guy 39 years in. He would tell his victims that he needed to suck out the demons. Gosh, suck out the demons. Listen, Phil, Brian, Barry, Graham, Gus, I've asked you in today because nobody is more concerned about you than I am. I can detect a demon. And fellas, I've got to be honest, there's a couple of ways we can go about this. But in my experience, 39 years as a Presbyterian pastor, sucking them out of you has always been the direction I've taken. You know, I've always believed that sucking the demons out of a man is the safest way to remove evil. So Bill Weaver was citing, the reason for sucking demons out. He was citing a mix of Native American rituals and a misinterpreted biblical passage from Ephesians 6:11. Put on the armor of God. Well, I don't know how you misinterpret that as in sucking off the fellas. I mean, a mix of Native American rituals. Jesus Christ. It's appropriation, isn't it? The highest form. The only thing that could have made that more inappropriate is if he'd done it in a sort of a teepee whilst doing that sort of, hot teepee therapy where you just sit in there and sweat it out, and then occasionally Bill would roll in and suck a demon out of you. I mean, he's put some thought into this if he's thinking that he can tie it back into the Native American rituals, which I'm pretty sure don't exist. He's instructed the men to undress, lie on a bed, remain still, which I think is interesting. He's encouraging them to remain still because I suppose the other option is you get up and leave. He's placed stones, feathers, and what's described as angel coins. I mean, I could have done a little bit more research and found out what they are, but I'm just really, for me, it's about sucking blokes off on or around their bodies. Civil lawsuits were brought against William, at which he then did not contest. Here's a bit of fun. He retired to a gated community and listed himself as a retired pastor, as opposed to a bloke that was sucking the demons out of the congregation. I mean, that doesn't look as good on a business card, does it? I'll suck the demon right out of you. Bill Weaver. He's offering to officiate weddings and baptisms. I mean, Jesus Christ, that'd be awkward, wouldn't it? You know, you're in the middle of your wedding / baptism. Isn't that the guy that sucked the absolute demons out of Phil? That bloke dunking your kid's head in the water, is that the guy that sucked the demons out of Brian? It's Christ, it looks like him. I mean, I'd recognise the top of his head anywhere. Moving on. We are going to just cover off a couple of stories now. Netflix executive Kevin Bailey, 48, was fired after he revealed that he'd taken ketamine during a company trust retreat. This is what happens when you start getting honest at retreats. Nobody tells you that there's possible fallout and repercussions from this kind of thing. So he's just minding his own business at the company retreat. He thinks, I'll share a story about ketamine, some ketamine use. And they've thrown it back in his face. It was medically prescribed for depression. He was at the time the vice president at a place called Eyeline Studios, where they do visual effects. They're owned by Netflix, done a bit of Pirates of the Caribbean, done a bit of Harry Potter, haven't we all? He was on $1.1 million a year. It's good money in anyone's language. Mind you, I can't imagine how you'd live off that, but separate conversation. In January, he finds himself at Sendaro Ranch. Is that not classic America? He's attending the retreat. He's minding his own business. During a vulnerability trust exercise, Kev revealed he'd taken ketamine under medical supervision to treat depression that had arisen after the death of his mother. I mean, that's a real thing. All of that's a real thing. There is ketamine trials. There is ketamine prescriptions. There is depression from the death of your mother. A few months after the retreat, the incident was brought up, and it was suggested that he was also involved in some recreational drug use. Other than the ketamine, the investigation looked into his use of profanity, which I believe was also taking place at the camp. He was warned to drop one or two of the F-bombs, but don't stop entirely, said management. So just ease it back a bit for us, Kev, will you? You're a fun guy. You're fun around the joint. We love it when you drop the F-bomb. Listen, just drop one or two of them. Don't remove it from your act entirely. That's not what we're saying. We love a bit of that gear. But just maybe ease back. Ease back on it. If you can hear the scratching on the door, it's the little Cocker Spaniel trying to get in. And that's not a euphemism. It's actually my dog trying to come into the room. Kevin has had some other issues that were looked into. So you had the profanity. Then there was the allegation at the camp that he'd drunk a Guinness standing on his head. So he's admitted to the ketamine being prescribed for depression. He's sworn up an absolute storm. It's like the sailors had rolled into town. And now he's admitting that, yeah, he did drink a Guinness standing on his head. It was a trick that he'd learned from his father-in-law. And when he told that story, the rest of the dudes at the camp were like, mate, you've got to show us. So, of course, rather than, as he said, withhold the openness of the session, rather than that, letting people down and not respecting what was going on at the camp, Sendaro Ranch, he was encouraged to perform the trick, so he did. He was let go and he's receiving no severance pay. Jesus Christ. I mean, that'll be an interesting one to find out how that pans out. This is what happens when you decide to be honest at a camp, at a work camp, which was encouraging honesty and openness. As soon as you are, HR step in and they go, hang on, mate, we didn't want you to be that honest. We didn't want you to share any of that stuff. We didn't want you to do the ketamine gear. We didn't want you to swear as much as you did. And drinking a Guinness while you're standing on your head's outrageous. We're letting you go. I mean, this is why you should never socialise with people from work en masse. Maybe 1, 2 guys from work who can keep a lid on stuff. And I'm not saying they have to keep a lid on anything that's illegal. I'm just saying, have a quiet drink, lunch, brunch, with a couple of people from work, but don't blow it out. If you're in a circle with people from work, you are asking for trouble. If you're standing in a circle doing trust exercises with people from work, firstly, you should quit because you're a cock and the people you work with are cocks. And secondly, that's going to end up at HR. And I'll tell you who the greatest cocks in the world are. HR. Not because they're trying to protect innocent people at work, not because they're trying to do the right thing around culture, not because they're protecting innocent people who are struggling to fit into an office system that they're having trouble adapting to because of certain people's behaviour. Not for any of those reasons, just because they're absolute bellends. They're old school dobbers. HR people wonder why everyone gives them a wide berth at work. It's because we don't like you. Anyway, this wasn't supposed to become an anti-HR rant. It was supposed to become a sort of a walk down the aisle of honesty sessions at camps that are designed to build trust, not steal it and throw it back in your face. Well done, everyone involved in that. Hey, here's a little bit of fun. I got on a roll last week about bullfighters and told a story about how we went to a bullfight as kids. Well, there's a follow-up, because at that bullfight, the bull jumped the fence, got into the crowd. I wasn't aware that they came out and poked spears into the bull. I didn't know that they were going to drive a sword through the back of the bull's neck, kill it, and then just put a rope around its legs and drag it out with the same horses that speared it when it came in. Anyway, here's one for the bloody bulls. One of Spain's top matadors was gored through the testicle in front of horrified spectators at a bullfight. One for the bulls won, testicles none. Footage shows the animal tossing David van Dierlo onto its horns, sending him into a somersault before being coaxed away by another metaphor. The crowd at Baeza bullring in Jaén could be heard gasping, collective gasp. When there's a collective gasp, something's gone terribly wrong. The wounded matador glanced down at his groin, assessing the damage. That was when they gasped. Fondila's colleagues rushed to his aid, and then they were inspecting his wound. He clutched the area as he limped out of the ring, supported by fellow bullfighters. There was a series of passes going on when the animal caught him in the groin area. Vandila was treated at the bull ring for what's being described as a bullhorn wound in the scrotum with evisceration of the right testicle. Holy hell. That horn's got right up into his scrot and just popped his right testicle. Evisceration. Evisceration is a cutting motion. I mean, that's, what is it? Cut it in half? Is it cut it out? Is the bull floating around somewhere in Spain? I mean, jeez. Not the only matador that's been gored in the groin in recent months either. There's another bloke here that found himself in a tight spot, Alberto Duran. Girls on film, indeed. He was 36. He was performing in the final qualifying round of the Copa Chanel bullfighting tournament. He was also gored in the nuts. The bull reared its head into Duran's groin, catching him with its horns. He thrust him into the air. It's not enough that you've got your sack cut open by a bull's horn. You also get thrown into the air. So you've got to land that. The audience recoiled in horror. He's escaped. He was rushed to hospital. He underwent surgery for a serious injury to his testicles. There's no mention of evisceration, which is good news. The initial surgery was completed without complication. However, they detected a blood clot in one of his legs. He had to undergo a second urgent procedure. His condition is described as stable and improving. Oh, God, here's another one. Just a month after, another bullfighter, Andreas Rockeret, you know Rockeret? Andreas Rockeret, was brutally gored in the thigh. Very serious condition for Rockeret. The bull's horn pierced the 29-year-old's right thigh, and then Rockeret was tossed around before the bull stepped on the injured matador. I love that too. So you've gone horn through the thigh. You've been tossed around whilst you're attached to the bull's horns. Then it starts stepping on you. Jesus Christ. 35 centimetre long wound that had two trajectories, one travelling up the leg and one travelling down. Serious damage to his right thigh. Though no major blood vessels were hit, my Christ, he was lucky. So you've got an eviscerated testicle, you've got a standard testicle injury, and you've got a 35 centimetre long two-trajectory wound. Christ almighty. So it's 3 to the Bulls, 0 to the Bullfighters at the moment. Current score, we'll keep an eye on that as the year unfolds. My little Cocker Spaniel is trying desperately to get into this room, but you can't come in, Reggie. I know, darling. You sit out there, sweetheart. If you come in, it'll be a nightmare for all of us. Moving on. How are we going for time? Yeah, look, we're going. Alligator story. I do love an alligator story, and this one ends well. I mean, it doesn't end entirely well, but it ends well enough. Story out of Florida. Beautiful little spot called Silver River. It sounds so romantic, doesn't it? A woman survived an attack, but she has lost her right arm. So, I mean, no one's high-fiving anyone there, quite literally. She was attacked by a 10-foot alligator dragged her under the water. She's had a fair crack at it with her paddle because she was stand-up paddle boarding. I mean, you could argue that if you stand up paddle boarding, you get what you deserve if you're a supper, if you sup. But that's just an old man's view of stand-up paddle boarding. Whenever I see it, I think, by Christ, what a sad person, what a sad and lonely person you are. A heroic bystander got involved. Now, you tell me if this is heroic. This is why I'm covering it off, because I don't know if it is heroic. He's described as a good Samaritan, which I hate. For some reason, I hate the word Samaritan. Maybe it's my Catholic upbringing. John Gamache was his name. Not Ganache, that's separate. It's tempered chocolate. John Gamache, he's eating his lunch on his boat, so he's just eating his lunch on his boat. He's seen the alligator in the water. Okay, he's seen it. He speeds over. By the time he reaches the poor lady, the alligator's let her go. And she's clinging to her paddleboard with a good arm, I'm assuming. He's seen the injuries. He's made a rope tourniquet. Is that the heroic bit? When I started reading the article and it said heroic bystander, I thought this bloke's going to Steve Irwin this alligator. He's going to launch a rear assault and, tape its mouth shut with some improvised sort of ocky strap kind of thing that he pulls out of the boat. No, he got there after the alligator had let her go and put a tourniquet on her arm. He did say it was a horrible injury, bones poking out, blood everywhere. Obviously, the minutes mattered, which is why the tourniquet is heroic, I guess. Maybe I'm being unreasonable. She's recovering. She did have to have her injured arm amputated, which is terrible. Ganache said the family was deeply grateful for his, and he's described it as heroic efforts. It's self-described. The family was deeply grateful for his heroic efforts, and they thanked him over the phone. I love that. Should we go and visit John? Should we take him a bottle of wine, some flowers? I mean, what he did was pretty heroic. Well, we'll give him a ring. Should we ring him? Listen, if he doesn't answer, just leave a message. Gamache said, we're glad it happened as good as it could have. Like the result is just the sustained injury and nothing more. Well, it's a little bit more, and I understand that it's nothing more than the sustained injury. But the sustained injury, John, was that the poor woman lost her arm. They closed the river and they captured the alligator, who I'm sure is now a couple of handbags, a belt, and a pair of boots. It does raise the question, doesn't it, off topic? In Australia, we've got 1 million crocodile farms. God knows how many crocodiles come out of crocodile farms, how many belts and bags and boots we're making from crocodile farms, but we're not shooting any of the ones in the rivers. Interesting. I'm not going down that road. All right. I think we're sort of heading into wrapping it up territory. I had a couple of other things I wanted to talk about. I'll save them for another time. You'll find them pop up in the vault in another couple of weeks. Never throw content out. It's a long race. You'll always get a chance to use it. That's just a message to young people. I'll finish with this Jim penis story. I feel like I've talked a fair bit of penis stuff today. What was the bullfight stuff? Was there other penis gear? Oh no, it was David Warner. Here's an interesting story. Exercise can alter penile appearance. Now, I was not aware of this. I mean, it's been a while since I've exercised, I'm not going to lie. I don't mind a brisk walk, but it's been a while since I've hit the treadmill or found myself in a gym, and people might say that's obvious. Well, to those people, I say mind your own business. Worry about your own backyard before you start worrying about mine. It's called post-workout pump. So what happens is that your muscles are bigger because you've worked out. You've been pumping iron, you've been doing cardio, whatever. You've pumped yourself up. The opposite effect is taking place on the penis. I never knew this. And the term is called gym penis. Sounds like a franchise. Gym penis. Bloke comes over and wanks you. Very hard to get into the franchise. Gym penis. Chris Bustamante is this gentleman's name. He's an aesthetic nurse practitioner, whatever that is. That's what Chris Bustamante does. I think I knew his cousin, Buster Nut. He's little known. He's saying it's a little known yet normal side effect of working out is the gym penis. Some notice it and others don't. I mean, that's life, isn't it? Some may feel like they're what he's described as turtling, or what puppetry of the penis used to call the old sea anemone. Turtling. I love it. It may be triggered by activities that stimulate the flight or fight mode. Is this the most ridiculous story you've ever heard from an aesthetic nurse practitioner, Chris Bustamante? Turtling is so far the highlight. May be triggered by activities that stimulate the flight or fight mode. Despite being temporary, he warned it can have a psychological effect. What, turtling? Well, you know your cock's going to come back out, don't you? You mean you're not that simple that your penis is retracted or the muscles around it have increased in size, so much so that you start worrying, that it's a permanent injury and you're going to take psychological damage forward in your life because you've experienced a bit of the old sea anemone, a little bit of turtling? You can become anxious about your size and reluctant to use shared changing rooms, which does remind me of the time I was lucky enough to play a charity AFL game on the Sydney Cricket Ground. And there was a big group of us, obviously, and we were sharing the change rooms. And I tell you what was intimidating that day. Joel Edgerton. Everything about him. And I think you know what I mean. If you want to talk about psychological damage and about feeling anxious about your size and reluctant to use a shared changing room, well, stand next to Joel Edgerton when you're in the change rooms, about to have an ice bath, a totally unnecessary ice bath, but an ice bath. And I'll never forget. Joel, and while I've got an opportunity, I'd like to thank him for opening my eyes to what it is to be an Australian, a red-blooded male. Ooh, boy, it certainly made me anxious about sharing the change rooms. I'm not going to lie. I was turtling out of fear. Here's some stats, though. Some fun stats to end the podcast today. In 2024, British men, this must have been a British story, British men are 68th on the biggest penises list in the world. They're the 68th biggest penis country in the world at 5.17 inches. What's that in centimetres? Look, I'll just do that for those of us that are... I understand inches, but there'll be a whole group of people that don't. 5.17 inches. Oh, come on, just give it to me. Oh, I wrote 5.27 for a start. Hang on a sec. I'm sorry, guys. I know this is ridiculous. 5.17 inches, 2 centimetres. It's 13, just minimally over. Let's call it 13 centimetres. That puts you in the top 68th countries in the world. It's a 13 centimetre penis. The biggest penises in the world coming in at... Let me just do this, because otherwise we're all going to have to do it ourselves. 6.93 inches to centimetres. What have we got there? 17 centimetres. 17 centimetres of penis, and the first place getters the wonderful country of Ecuador. Now, I didn't expect that. Ecuador. have got the biggest penises in the world. So if you're out and about, ladies and gentlemen, and you're on the tear, and you find yourself propped up at the bar and an Ecuadorian man slides up next to you, just know that you're in for a torrid night, followed by Cameroon and Bolivia in second and third. Goes on to say, Jim Penis is harmless, and I'll add that if turtling continues, please seek medical advice. All right, I think that's enough for today. Time-wise, I don't want to take up any more of your time. Have a lovely week. I'll talk to you next week. I need a sign-off. Stay safe, be kind. I don't know. I do need a sign-off. Maybe you could suggest some sign-offs for me on Insta. Do us a favour, follow me on Instagram. Do us a real favour if you're in Bowral, come and see the show next weekend, being the, if you're listening to this at some other time, Friday night, 28th of August 2026. If you're in Bowral, please come and see the Red Card Tour. And otherwise, I will chat to you next week. See you then. Bye.